Hi, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. I'm Sophie and today I have part 4 of my autumn reading guide. So it's a grey and rainy day in London today, which is actually perfect for the vibes of this video because part 4 of my autumn reading guide is going to be focusing on horror books. So I'm going to be talking about some dark, weird and unsettling books that are not necessarily traditional horror, but they are more focused on horrors of humanity. And these are more stories about our bodies, our minds, our fears, and the way humanity itself can be terrifying. We have some cannibalism, we have an exploration of some of the horrors at the bottom of the sea. We have a woman who gets called by her sister to help dispose of the latest boyfriend that she's dispatched. We have some telekinesis. We have an author who was in an accident and is now held captive at his biggest fan's house. We have a zombie sister in a wheelbarrow. We have a society of people who have to go outside blindfolded so they're not affected by an unseen entity. And we have poltergeists in IKEA. So let's get started with part 4 of my autumnal reading guide. So first up, I have a book which still haunts me to this day. It is one of the most disturbing and horrifying books I have ever read, and that is Tender is the Flesh. And this is by Agustina Bazterrica and was originally published in Spanish. Bazterrica is an Argentinian novelist. This one is gruesome and at times made me feel physically sick, but I would highly recommend this. This is set in a not too distant future where animals have become infected with a virus that is deadly to humans, so humans can no longer consume animal meat. Governments initiated something called the transition, which now means that cannibalism is legalized. So due to this virus, meat products and any animals that were used to produce meat have been destroyed. And now there is a new meat which is called special meat, which is human meat, and this is now legal. So humans are now bred to replace animal meat. This story follows Marcus, who works at a slaughterhouse, and he is responsible for processing human meat, except for you're not allowed to call them human, they are called heads. And their sole purpose is to provide meat for consumption. So he works in processing, and one day he is given a special specimen which is kind of the first pure humans, which are those that have always been living in captivity and bred for meat. Marcus has quite a strong moral compass. He is coming to terms with the loss of his son, and after that his wife also left him, and his father is ill and requiring funds for care, which is the reason why Marcus is doing the job that he's doing. He doesn't necessarily believe in what he's doing, but it's necessary for him to survive. So when he's presented with this human specimen, he finds it difficult to immediately process her. So he ends up taking her back to his house and leaving her in the barn to deal with later. But he soon becomes tortured and haunted by this woman, and he doesn't want to process her for meat. And he even gives her a name. He also starts to develop feelings for her. So yeah, as I said, this one was very shocking. A lot of gruesome stuff happens in here, so it's not really for the faint-hearted. It's quite difficult to say I love this book because the subject matter is so awful and it really shows the worst of what humanity could be, and shows actually what humans can be desensitized to. Farming of special meat has become the norm, and a lot of people don't seem to have a problem with this. So this book may traumatize you, but it is one of those stories that has really stayed with me. I think about it a lot, and yeah, it's very haunting. I think it's also meant to be a discussion of our approach to farming and meat and capitalism and the horrific things that humanity does to itself. You also don't think that anything can be more horrific than what's actually going on at the start, but there are some other things that happen throughout this which just shock you even more, and you begin to wonder, could humans actually do this, and would they actually do it? So yeah, it's definitely not for really sensitive readers. So yeah, if you don't like gore and horror and the shocking things that humanity do, then probably not for you. This edition even asked the question on the cover, if everyone was eating human meat, would you? But yes, I highly recommend this. So next I have another book which has a lot of gore and gross descriptions in, but this is Bat Eater by Kylie Baker. Now, I read this earlier in the year and I cannot stop thinking about this. I love this book so much. This kind of weaves a lot of topics together. So this is set in the COVID pandemic in New York, and we follow Cora, who is a crime scene cleaner. She has become desensitized to these horrific scenes because she has already witnessed the most horrific thing possible, and that is her sister being pushed in front of a train while standing right next to her. Cora is still haunted by this and haunted by the last words of the assailant, which were Bat Eater. So her life is basically spent cleaning up crime scenes and ruminating over the death of her sister and feeling helpless that there was nothing she could do about it. But after attending several crime scenes to clean in quick succession, Cora realises that Asian women are being targeted by a killer. Potentially this will help her uncover who was behind her sister's murder. But Kylie Lee Baker does not hold back on the gross stuff. She explains everything about the crime scene, about blood splatters, about body parts, about the smells of the crime scene, and all of just that gross stuff. She goes into great detail about that. So it makes this book really gory. There is so much going on in this book. It's also about the treatment of Asian people in New York during the pandemic and the blame that was placed on Asian people and the treatment of them and the violence towards them, and also this slur of Bat Eater. So there is so much going on here. There's also hints to some Chinese folklore, and Cora's aunt is also preparing for the Hungry Ghost Festival. And Cora is also kind of haunted by a ghost as well. So it weaves a lot of things together, and I cannot stop thinking about this. I also have the Evernight edition from Illuma Crate, and this is just beautiful. So I love the cover. I love the bats on the sprayed edges here. And yeah, some artwork in the front and in the back, very spooky. And then a very, very spooky cover, and then the original cover in a different colourway. It's a stunning edition, and yeah, I'm glad I got the Evernight edition, otherwise I may not have picked up this book. So yeah, I would highly recommend this. So the last book in the kind of gross body horror section is Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. Again, this is a book that I cannot stop thinking about. It was so weird and creepy. I kind of get a little bit creeped out about what could possibly be lurking at the bottom of the ocean. So this one, yeah, was quite ominous. So the story follows Miri and Leah. So Leah goes on a mission in a deep sea vessel along with a group of people, but the mission ended in catastrophe and the vessel went missing. So Miri has been living her life day to day, coming to terms with the fact that Leah went missing under the ocean, and also kind of joining a very small club of people whose partners had gone missing on various missions. But fortunately, Leah's vessel is recovered and she does come back, but Miri is convinced that she has come back wrong. And the mission was going down the depths to discover something about a specific piece of marine life, and it appears that Leah has carried part of that back with her onto dry land and into her and Miri's home. So Miri is obviously elated that Leah has come back safe and alive, and she thinks that they will soon start to be able to get back to normal. But Leah starts doing some really strange things. So Leah ends up having a lot of baths. She wants to have a lot of contact with water, and it soon becomes clear that there is something very wrong with Leah, and she is definitely not who went out on that mission. And this was so creepy and disturbing, but it was beautifully written. So it's very much a crossover of literary fiction, kind of dystopia and horror, but it will definitely get under your skin and stay with you and yeah, probably creep you out. But this was Julia Armfield's debut, and I think she did such an amazing job on her first novel. I cannot believe that it was a debut novel. It is amazing and beautifully written, and she's a very good writer. So yeah, it's a story of falling in love, loss, grief, and what life there is in the deep, deep sea. So definitely recommend this. So the next section of this video is moving into more psychological horror, and in this section I have 2 books by the king of horror, Stephen King himself. So first up we have Carrie, which was King's first novel, and this is the beautiful 50th anniversary edition. It's crazy to think that this is now more than 50 years old. But this, I guess, is about bullying, repression, and religious trauma. So the book is about Carrie White, who is not a normal girl. She has the powers of telekinesis. So she has a very rough time at school. She is bullied for being different. She's a very late bloomer and very naive. So Carrie's mother is very controlling of her, and as a result of this, Carrie is very naive and she doesn't know much about the world. But she longs to be accepted at school and join the circle of popular people. So it's a dream come true for Carrie when Tommy, one of the popular boys, asks her to prom. And this is kind of the first step towards her being accepted by her peers at school. But events take a horrifying turn, and then Carrie is forced to use her powers of telekinesis against the town that's mocked her, basically turning Carrie from this very naive girl into a monster. But I think this is really trying to show how Carrie is severely impacted by the bullying, and it changes her as a person and makes her do horrible things. And it just kind of shows like how far can somebody be pushed until they crack. This is actually the first King that I read, and you can see why he is such a well-respected horror writer. This was also turned into a film with Sissy Spacek in the 1970s, which is iconic, and there is an iconic scene from this involving pig's blood, which is repeated a lot throughout the horror genre. I would actually probably say this is quite a good starting point if you want to get into Stephen King, because it is quite short and it's a great story. And although Carrie has powers of telekinesis, it feels quite universal and relatable. So next I have another Stephen King book, which again is iconic, and it is Misery. So this one is very tense, very chilling, and very claustrophobic at times. Also, I love the fact that King has chosen to write a story about an author. It's almost like he's putting himself in this role as the lead character in this book. So we follow an author called Paul Sheldon, who has sold a lot of bestsellers, and he has decided to kill off Misery, who is the main character in his best-selling series. He has nothing really against Misery, it's just he's finally decided that he wants to write something else, so he's made a lot of money off this character, but it's time for him to do something new. One day he is involved in a terrible car accident. Then he wakes up splintered in a remote cabin in pain, and he comes face to face with his rescuer called Annie Wilkes. So Annie was a nurse. She knows a lot about pain relief. She has also long been one of Paul's fans, but when she finds out what he's done to Misery, she really doesn't like it. So Paul ends up being held hostage by Annie, and she's not going to let him go until he's written a story that she wants. This was very chilling and very creepy. As I said before, very claustrophobic. So Paul is stuck in this room and he can't physically get out. He's in a lot of pain, and he's obviously sustained a lot of injuries in the car accident. So he can't move. He's forced to write every day. And this is very much about the fan that's gone too far. She's turned into a stalker and she turned into his worst nightmare. This also was actually turned into film, which I have yet to see. I know, don't judge me. I have to get to that as soon as possible. But I really did enjoy the book. So next I have a book that's not necessarily a horror. It's a little bit more literary thriller, but this is My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. Now, this one, again, is a book that stayed with me long after I finished it. So this story follows two sisters, Kyrie and Ayula. Kyrie is a nurse and very well respected in society. Ayula is a little bit more flaky. She's a bit more of a socialite. She hasn't really got her life planned out. One night, Kyrie's dinner is interrupted by a distress call from her sister, who has dispatched yet another one of her boyfriends. So she calls her sister to come and help her clean up the mess and dispose of the body. So Kyrie really disapproves of what her sister's doing, and she knows that she should go to the police for the menfolk of Nigeria. But she loves her sister and family comes first for her. But then Ayula starts dating a doctor who works at the hospital where Kyrie is a nurse. And Kyrie has actually been in love with this doctor, so she doesn't want to see him end up murdered like the rest of her sister's boyfriends. So she's going to have to make a decision. Is she going to step in and do something, or continue to watch her sister murder more men? I was so intrigued by the concept of this and I really loved it. This is also one of the books that you could read in a single sitting. It was addictive, and actually it was also very funny and witty, and Oyinkan Braithwaite is an amazing author. She does have a new novel out which is called Cursed Daughters, which I'm hoping to pick up. But yeah, I would highly recommend this. The third section of this video is more focused on horrors of kind of the outside world. So first up I have Last Ones Left Alive by Sarah Davis-Goff, and this is by an Irish author, and this is the author's take on a post-apocalyptic zombie novel. So this book follows Orpen, who grows up in Slamburg, which is off the Irish mainland, and she lives with her mother and her sister Maeve, and she's actually never met anyone else apart from her mother and her sister. So the mainland has been infected with a virus and it's now overrun with the Scrake, so like zombie-like creatures. And while Slamburg is relatively safe, they always have to be prepared to run or fight. So one day Orpen's sister Maeve is bitten by a Scrake, and Orpen has a choice. She either has to kill her sister or let her sister be turned into a Scrake. There is one other option, and that is to find help. So Orpen decides to see if she can get help for her sister. So she ends up putting her sister in a wheelbarrow and sets off with her transforming sister and her dog to try and find help for Maeve and see if they can reverse the effects of the bite. But what Orpen doesn't know is if there is actually anyone else alive out there, or if her and her sister are the last ones left alive. But this was a great take on the zombie genre, and it really did tell the story of what lengths people go to protect the ones that they love. So the world is bleak, but this story is beautifully written, and I would also describe it as a feminist survival story. So up next I have another book which was turned into a very popular film. This is Bird Box by Josh Malerman. So I did actually watch the film before I read the book, as I didn't actually realise it was based on the book until I seen it, and yeah, I did like the film. The book and the film are very similar, they follow the same kind of plot points. So Bird Box is a story about this entity that cannot be seen, but if you look at it, you are then compelled to take your own life, and nothing can stop this from happening. So this is an entity that nobody can see, but it's wreaking havoc over the world. So firstly, no one really knows what's happening in this world, but they gradually realise that if they cover their eyes, then this entity cannot get to them. So in order to go outside, people have to wear blindfolds, and inside, people are covering up all their windows and shutting themselves in to protect themselves from this entity. So we focus really on Mallory, who is a mother, and she has 2 children, and she has to keep these children safe and protect them from this mysterious entity. So Mallory has done everything she can to keep them safe, but across the radio she hears of a place where people are safe from this entity and they can live without their blindfolds. So Mallory wants a better life for her children, so she does the unthinkable and sets out one day blindfolding her children and getting them to safety. So they end up risking everything to find this new home. And this is very much a psychological thriller, and it just really tells the story of Mallory and how far she's willing to go to protect her children from this unseen thing. So this novel kind of starts at the point at which Mallory is deciding to leave this home, and then we do end up getting backstory. So we find out what happened at the start of this epidemic, and then we follow Mallory's story and how she came to be by herself with these 2 children. I definitely recommend this if you like psychological horror, also if you enjoyed the movie as well. Next I have a little bit of a slasher, kind of a American camp horror, and that's You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Kylie and Bayron. Bayron is also author of Cinderella is Dead and This Poison Heart. And this one is very fast paced and full of twists. So we are following Charity Curtis, who has a summer job at a camp, and she plays the final girl at this camp. The camp is set up for guests who are actually paying to be scared and be part of this kind of murder mystery slasher RPG. So Charity and the rest of the crew recreate scenes from classic horror films. They are having a great season and they've got lots of satisfied customers, but on the last weekend of the season, Charity's co-workers begin disappearing, and when one of her colleagues ends up dead, she realises that being the final girl might be more real than she initially thought. So Charity's girlfriend Bezzy is also part of this group, so they are determined to survive and find out who is behind the murders and how they can get out of this season alive. But they start to uncover a lot of mystery and history about the camp location, and Charity discovers that there may be more to the story than first suspected. This one is full of twists and turns, and it has black and queer representation, and this is very reminiscent of a 90s slasher film in book form. This one is also quite short, so it's quite a fast-paced read, but definitely recommend if you're looking for a slasher horror book. So next up we have a book by one of my favourite authors, Silvia Moreno-Garcia, and this is Mexican Gothic, and this was actually the first book that I read by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, and it got me hooked on her writing. So this book is a masterclass in atmosphere, so we have a decaying mansion, an ancient family, and a young girl uncovering dark secrets. So this is a Gothic horror at its heart and really kind of goes into the genre of Gothic horror and borrows elements from traditional Gothic horror. But this also explores the horror of history and colonial past and how privilege and power can literally infect the body. So this is set in 1950s Mexico. We follow a glamorous socialite, Noemi, and she gets a frantic letter from her cousin Catalina, who's newly married, and she's married a rich man with a family legacy, and they are now living in the family mansion. Catalina does normally have a flair for the dramatic, but she claims that her new husband is poisoning her, and she has visions of restless ghosts. So Naomi decides to go to the mansion and visit her cousin and find out if there's any truth in Catalina's claims. But when she gets to the mansion, she feels very uneasy and she starts to uncover sinister secrets about the family. So Naomi ends up staying at the mansion, and her only ally is the youngest son of this family who wants to help her, but he is also hiding a dark secret about the family's past. Naomi starts to uncover stories of violence and madness and gets closer to the family's most guarded secret. This really brings kind of the classic Gothic vibe into a 1950s Mexican setting, and I really love the atmosphere and I love Silvia Moreno-Garcia's writing. As I've said before, she is one of my favourite authors. What I would say here though is I would highly recommend this book, but if you dislike talk of mushroom and fungi in a horror setting, then there is a large section of this book that you will probably want to miss. But also I love the cover of this. I think this is one of my favourite covers of her novels. So next we have Hörrorstor by Grady Hendrix, and this is basically ghosts in IKEA. Well, not IKEA, I don't know what they've called it, but it's meant to be like IKEA, so it's Orsk furniture. So firstly, I love the whole design of this book. So it is basically like an IKEA catalogue, so it's got the various pieces of furniture and the cost, but also we have kind of the ghostly pictures in here as well. And throughout the book as well, there's various different kind of flat pack furniture that you can build, and yeah, it's very cleverly done. This is not my favourite of Grady Hendrix. I did prefer some of his other stuff, but I loved the concept of this book, and I have always wondered what could possibly happen in IKEA if you go there and you get shut in, and possibly is it haunted? It kind of plays into that idea that a lot of us have about what happens in shops after dark. So the premise of this is that something strange is happening at an Orsk store in Cleveland, Ohio. So every morning employees come in to discover that cups and glasses are smashed and a lot of furniture is wrecked and the displays have been moved around. A lot of damage has been caused overnight. Sales are down in the shop, and also the management is starting to get worried. So a few of the employees decide that they will spend a night in the store to find out who is behind the damage and what is going on in their store, as they also can't uncover anything from the security cameras. So these employees work through the night and they patrol the store, and they start to uncover some sinister happenings within this store. So this is like a traditional haunted house story, but moving it to kind of a modern store. And it's not just about the ghosts that haunt the store, but it's also the critique on capitalism and how corporate systems can grind people down. So it's more that maybe a corporation is the monster and not the ghost. So yeah, it was a great concept. I'm not sure if Grady Hendrix completely delivered on the promise, but yeah, the premise was amazing, and he is a great writer and he's really good at bringing horror novels to life. So I definitely recommend this if you've ever wondered what happens in IKEA after dark, and also are a fan of Grady Hendrix's writing. So we've now reached the last book of this video, and this is Things We Say in the Dark by Kirsty Logan. Now this is a short story collection of a number of stories which drift between nightmares, mythology and domestic horror. Kirsty Logan is so good at creating atmosphere and writing these dark and eerie, evocative pieces. And these short stories are perfect if you want something a little bit out of the ordinary. I'll read you the synopsis. Some things can't be spoken about in the light of day, but we can visit our fears at night in the dark. We can turn them over and weigh them in our hands, and maybe they will protect us from them, but maybe not. The characters in this collection find their aspirations for happy homes, happy families and happy memories dissected and imbued with shimmering menace. Alone in a remote house in Iceland, a woman is unnerved by her isolation. Another can only find respite from the clinging ghost that follows her by submerging herself in an overgrown pool. Couples wrestle with a lack of connection to their children. A schoolgirl becomes obsessed with the female anatomical models in a museum, and a cheery account of a child's day out is undercut by chilling footnotes. These dark tales explore women's fears with electrifying honesty and invention, and speak to one another about female bodies, domestic claustrophobia, desire and violence. Things We Say in the Dark is a powerful contemporary collection of feminist stories, ranging from vicious fairy tales to tender ghost stories. So yeah, I would highly recommend this if you are looking for something a little bit different, a little bit more ambiguous, and if you are a fan of the dark and strange. So those are the 12 books that I wanted to talk to you about in this video. I hope you have found some new recommendations. Please let me know in the comments if you have enjoyed any of these, or if you are looking forward to reading any of these. Also, if you have any other recommendations. So thank you for watching part 4 of the autumn reading guide. I will also have part 5 for you soon, and that's going to focus more on classics for spooky season. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you can be notified when that goes live. See you next time. Thanks, bye.